So thank you, Jason, at Pacific Coast TV. And Susan Getchell-Wallace has been passing a flyer with the QR code. Please take their survey. Okay, help them out. They're helping us out by broadcasting this meeting and other fine meetings and programs. So, turning to today's program, the Candidates Forum. So in attendance, we have 6 Democrats vying for Anna Eshu's seat in the 16th Congressional District. So I'm going to go down the line. Joby Bernstein, Joe Samidian, Ahmed Mustafa, Rishi Kumar, Julie Lithcott-Hames, and Sam Liccardo. So thank you all. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. So the ground rules are each candidate will be given 2 minutes for introductory remarks. We're taking questions from the audience. There are index cards all over the place, so please print large and legible. And as I said, 2-minute answers, and then hopefully we really want to watch the clock so that we can get 2 minutes each for concluding remarks. And I'm sure you're all familiar with, I call it a round robin for lack of a better word. We start with Joby. Next round, we start with Joe, and we go down the line, rotating, alternating speakers. And our timekeeper is Dave. Dave, show them the 1-minute warning. Dave, show them the stop. So write out your cards. We'll get to as many as we can, time permitting, but we really have to wrap it up. Sharp Park Restaurant is kind enough to give us this venue every month for free, so that's why we encourage people to buy food and support the restaurant. But Kevin has a new group coming in, so we've got to start getting ready to leave by like 11:30, 11:40. So just be mindful of our hard deadline. Okay, so since I'm not on a Hawaiian cruise and I get the first question, yeah. I know, index cards. I know this is too small to see, so please go online to see this map of Congressional District 16. So my show of hands, and I'm really a nice person, but I have to ask this: who needed Google Maps to find Pacifica today? So this is the map. We are way up here, and we call ourselves the coast or the Northern Peninsula, and I think you people call the rest of it Silicon Valley. So the redistricting really did a number on us. And so we will be asking specific questions that concern Pacificans, but my first question, starting with Joby, is just generally speaking, are you familiar with Pacifica's issues, and what will you, if elected, commit to do to address our issues? Thank you.
Can we get a chance to make opening statements? Who wants to make opening statements?
Oh, geez. Thanks, Joby. Yes. So, thank you. Well, you got my vote. So, yeah, thank you for keeping me on track. So, opening statements, 2 minutes.
Okay. And does the mic? Awesome. Thank you all for making it out today. My name is Joby Bernstein. I'm running to be your next congressman. I am very excited to be in Pacifica as can everyone hear me okay in the back? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. I am excited to be in Pacifica. I'm a open water swimmer, a hiker, a mountain biker. I love Pacifica. You don't get all those resources and amenities in Palo Alto, so it is fun to be here. I have watched over the last 15 years the devastation that climate change has had on our state, whether it's from droughts to floods to wildfires. Does anyone know how many acres have been burned in this state over the last decade? A lot. We've had 7.9 million acres. That's 24.7% of forests in this state. I've watched some of my favorite friends come here from abroad to work here, get fantastic jobs in our community, and then get kicked out. And even though they're close friends, it's 40,000 people per year are getting kicked out of California who are working here. Or I've seen, seen an education system that's become too far out of reach for too many, from preschool to college. We are losing what is most vital to us, our environment, our neighbors, and our children's future. But I know what we can accomplish. I want everyone to see the beauty of this state that I experienced when I was in awe after my first backpacking trip in the Sequoias 15 years ago. I want everyone to be inspired, like teachers have inspired me to aim for my dreams. And I want everyone to see the innovation and bright minds that have come here from abroad to work here and contribute to our community. Like you, I'm an innovator, a doer, and a self-starter who is not going to Congress to fight, but to make things right. Thank you all.
Good morning. That does not count as fired up and ready to go. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day in Pacifica. Forgive me if I am redundant, but I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian. I am a candidate for Congress. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for your willingness to hear us out, and I hope to earn your support. Per the map that was shared with us, there are 15 cities and towns in the 16th Congressional District. I have had the opportunity to represent 14 of those 15 cities and towns in my prior roles as not only a county supervisor, but a state senator and a state assembly member. The one city that was never part of my district, Pacifica. So it particularly pleases me to be here and to know a little bit more about what you care about, and I'm looking forward to those questions. I do just want to say by way of introduction that the folks who know this community and who know your needs, your wants, your wishes, have been kind enough to lend their support to me because I've already been engaged. So Congresswoman Anna Eshoo endorses my candidacy. Former Congresswoman Jackie Spear endorses my candidacy. Supervisor Ray Mueller, who I saw moving around somewhere here, thank you, Ray Mueller, for your support of my candidacy and a majority of your local city council. So thank you to them all and to the San Mateo Daily Journal, who singled me out as someone who knew this part of the district because I had spent time representing portions of the coast in the California state legislature. When Joby talks about climate change, I think it's important to remember it's real, it's here, it's now, and the impact is immediate on Pacifica. The job of your member of Congress is to address those issues on your behalf in the United States House of Representatives. Thank you very much, and I'm passing the mic.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. My name is Ahmed Mustafa, and I'm running for Congress to ensure that the voices that have been silenced and sidelined can echo in the halls of Congress. I'd actually like to start off with a story that's deeply personal to me. A few years ago, my grandfather came to visit me from Egypt. I'm the child of immigrants, and he still lives there. And so when he came, he actually didn't qualify for travel insurance because of preconditions. And I found him on my bed presenting with stroke-like symptoms. I called all my friends who were doctors, and they said, "You must rush him to the hospital." We showed up at Stanford Hospital, and he slowly began to regain consciousness. They told us that his heart was beating at 23 beats per minute, and that he needed a pacemaker as soon as possible. My grandfather, who had regained consciousness, asked, "How much is this going to cost me?" And they said $300,000. At which point my grandfather stated, "I am not going to put my children or my grandchildren in debt just to live maybe an extra 2 or 3 years." And I, as an attorney and someone who knew doctors, was able to get him the health care that he deserved. However, the question that I asked myself is, how many people from vulnerable communities end up walking out of that hospital? And so for me, this is about human dignity. Nobody should make those choices, to live an extra 2 or 3 years just so, they could put their children in debt. That is a question nobody should ask. Or to sleep on the streets because they're in a mental health crisis. So my campaign is about ensuring that people have the dignity that they deserve, and that their voices are heard, and that they're represented, and that they feel like people. Because at the end of the day, that's what America is about. We are people, and we ensure that people's voices are heard, not just the special interest groups, not just the corporate interests, but your voices are heard. And that's what I will commit to doing. Thank you.
Far be it from me to muzzle anybody, but let's hold our applause so that we can really get as many questions in as possible. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Rishi Kumar, and I'm very honored to be here, sitting here, running in this race. We did 42% in the election in 2022, in the November election. We made top 2, beating 6 formidable challengers. And here we are running with some pretty amazing colleagues here. I'm enjoying this ride, and hopefully you're enjoying watching some of us do our little antics as candidates. But really it's about solving problems and addressing challenges, which is what I did as a council member, getting re-elected with the highest votes in 66 years of my city, taking on challenges like utility companies, and reducing utility rates, reducing the bill. Public sector optimization. I believe there's a lot of bleed that happens in the public sector. Optimizing and making sure that we don't pass on the cash to people, but we try to optimize our government. And also in terms of crime. I mean, I don't see any crime here in Pacifica, but there is a lot of crime that happens in that Silicon Valley where I come from. And we drop burglaries by 50%. And that's the reason why I'm running as a mechanical engineer, as a tech guy. I'm a C-suite executive in a Silicon Valley startup, and I spend time in IBM, Cisco's of the world. But it's really about understanding the issues and addressing the challenges, which is the reason why I made multiple trips here to the coast side. I was at Linda Mar. I was at the San Pedro Mountains. I've taken the time to meet with people. This is extremely important to me. Now, just about 2 weekends back, Joe and myself were here at the Half Moon Bay 1-year anniversary shooting. And that was a very, very solemn ceremony. And, Ray Muller was there, and a bunch of folks in this room were there. And it was great to be talking to people and understanding the issues and challenges. And I'm honored to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation, the good questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Lithcott-Hames. I want to open with gratitude to Connie for putting this amazing gathering together, and for the restaurant for providing this space and this food, and to all of you for making this a priority on your Saturday. We all have so much to be doing: family, work, health issues, leisure, kids, all of it, and you've chosen to make local democracy a part of your day. And this is what makes America strong, and how we're going to get America back, frankly. I'm originally from the Midwest and the East Coast. I came out here to Northern California at 17 and fell in love with the weather and the people and the politics and a guy. and that guy got down on one knee here on the coast side. And we've been together for 36 years. I have always wanted to use my life to serve others. I come from a public school teacher mom and a public health doctor dad. They used their life to make someone else's life better, and they inspired me to do the same. I've been a lawyer. I've been a Stanford dean, supporting marginalized youth and thriving on our campus. I want you to know I will always root for the underdog, because I have been the underdog. As a black and biracial person growing up in predominantly white spaces, I know what it is like to be overlooked, and it instills in me a compassion for all humans who, for whatever reason, are forgotten. My support comes from as far away as Cory Booker. Senator Cory Booker says, "I like your heart and your head, I like how you lead." And it comes from as nearby as the REACH Coalition of San Mateo County, that confers allyship upon candidates who use their voice and actions to advocate for San Mateo and the Bay Area's most underserved people. So I don't need to tell you, Pacifica, that you are the underdog in this district. Schools, housing, infrastructure. I am not a member of your community, but I commit to being in community with you. I will, as your leader, as your representative, I will humbly listen, learn from you, and then fight like hell for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name's Sam Liccardo. I was the former mayor of that small town on the other side of the district, San Jose. And I want to thank, again, all of you for taking the time to come through the rain to be here. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, everyone who organized this. I know Mike O'Neill couldn't be here, but grateful to everyone who took the time to bring us together. You know, as a mayor, you have to be pretty accountable. When there are burglaries, when there's a homeless encampment nearby, when there's a pothole, you hear about it every time I'm at the Safeway, every time I'm at the gym. And mayors are expected to respond and to be accountable. In the city of San Jose, in my final year in 2022, we had the lowest homicide rate of any major city in the country. We reduced GHG emissions 36% as a result of launching a clean energy program similar to what you have here in the peninsula. We were able to provide my successor with a $30 million surplus. And we reduced street homelessness by 11% using innovative approaches to help people get housed and off the street. We need that kind of accountability in Congress. This is the least productive Congress in half a century, according to Axios. We need Congress to get things done, to address homelessness here in Pacifica, to address the infrastructure challenges that you have here in Pacifica. I know many of you endured the recent blackouts. We critically need Congress to focus on what matters most to us. So I wrote a book. Well, it's a booklet. It's on my website. I hope you'll take a look at it, samliccardo.com, with specific ideas about how we can get Congress moving around these critical issues, because you deserve to know not vague generalities, but what exactly are we going to stand up for? And that's why the San Francisco Chronicle and San Jose Mercury News and others have endorsed me in this race, because they've looked at these specific ideas and said, this is someone who has clear ideas about what he thinks he can accomplish for our community and how we can get Congress moving to address issues of the very high cost of living here in Pacifica and throughout our district, the cost of utilities, homelessness. I look forward to hearing your questions and learning more from you. Thank you.
So my jump start gave you 12 minutes to, in a general way, address Pacifica's concern that, and we start with Joe, you know, Are you familiar with Pacifica's issues, and what are you going to do for us? Because we're kind of feeling like we're going to get left behind with all the other, the heavy hitters in Silicon Valley. Thank you.
When you've represented half the cities in San Mateo County, as I have as a state legislator, you know that each one of them is unique. And that's an important thing, I think, for the member of Congress to understand. What happens in Pacifica and the needs of Pacifica are different than even just down the coast in Half Moon Bay. And you sometimes get lumped. And you know that Pacifica is a very different place with a very different set of needs. And that's certainly true if you go from Pacifica down to Little Saigon in San Jose. 15 cities and towns, very different. The answer to the question, I think the climate change issues, the coastal erosion is obviously the issue of the day. I'm watching as your community is working hard to try and develop some consensus around what the path ahead looks like. I think the job of your next member of Congress is to help make sure that whatever conclusion you come to, whatever direction you come to, is supported at the federal level. Some of that will mean helping with regulatory agencies. I know you have some experience with that. Some of that will definitely mean funding. I would expect that the member is helping with what's known as BRIC, the Building Resilience and Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program that provides federal funding. The next member of Congress has to be your advocate for that kind of funding and to make the regulatory agencies come together and work effectively to come to some successful conclusion that the local community develops over time. So not the decider for Pacifica, not the top down for Pacifica, but make sure that when the moment comes to get those resources and to move things through the federal bureaucracy, that your member of Congress is there and knows how to help you do that. That is my commitment to you, and I think that's what Pacifica deserves as a unique community among the 15 cities and towns in the 16th Congressional District. Thank you very much.
Hi, I commit to always coming and to learning about your issues directly. And I think that's something that I've personally learned as someone who has been a women's rights attorney representing survivors of sexual violence, is to amplify people's voices, not to speak for them. You must enter into a community with humility and to be able to learn about their issues directly. One thing that I would absolutely support is the Green New Deal for cities, which gives the local communities the support and empowerment that they need to make decisions for themselves, to empower those communities to build infrastructure directly in those communities directly. And so that is something that I would commit to doing, is empowering our local communities, listening to our local communities, and hearing your voices to amplify them directly. Not to speak for you, but to amplify your voice. So that is something that I would commit directly to you. I know that every single piece of our district and across the country has their own specific issues, especially with regard to climate change. With the inland parts of our state suffering from forest fires, and then here suffering from erosion. And if we look down the coast in the south, we're seeing mass floods that we have never seen before. So we must actually empower local communities directly, give them the infrastructure they need, empower our local small businesses to come up with these solutions to climate change. And that is something that I will always commit to doing, is hearing your voices, amplifying them, and being a direct representative to you, not special and corporate interest groups. Thank you.
Connie is doing such a fine job.
This is a club effort.
And she said, we'll be left behind again. And it created a deep resonance in me, because I've seen this happen for the coast. For many decades, we have all been left behind. And that's a true story. The infrastructure investment that should happen here hasn't happened. And that's why the cornerstone of my run has been for the working families. We need Medicare for all in America. And I've been the only candidate for many, many years who would push Medicare for all. I'm for the Green New Deal because climate change is happening right in front of us. I'm also for no PAC money, no special interest group money, which is a pledge that I took on the city council, rejected the developer money, and keeping my allegiance with the people. It's always for the people and addressing their challenges. And that's the reason why we did 42%, a total of 127,000 votes against an issue that nobody had ever achieved in 30 years. We spent $1.4 million in this race, knocking on 150,000 doors. We have talked to a bunch of people. The issues here, I'm going to summarize it. I know it very well because I've spent time here talking to people at the Lindamar Beach, at the San Pedro Mountain, looking at the quarry development project that's been proposed. The issue is one, very, very important one, PG&E. rishikumar.com/PGE. We have to municipalize them because there are power failures that happen here, and many of you don't have power every month. This is a travesty. This is not a third world country. Just because it's the coast doesn't mean it's a third world country. We can do a lot better. For decades, your voice has been ignored. We can do a lot better. So we have to turn them and municipalize them. Also, they're charging utility based upon your income. That's the way it's going. Sacramento, our legislators, our career politicians are going down the wrong path, and PG&E has derailed our lives. So I'm here to protect you from the trials and tribulations that PG&E is imposing upon us. The issue with schools, education, this is behind the curve, way behind. I'm here to fix that. But I'll be talking more. I'm running out of time here. I see that stop sign right there.
We should always obey stop signs. Well, where do we start, Pacifica? Here's what I have learned from my conversations with you since becoming a candidate a few months ago. Housing. Not enough housing. Teachers can't afford to live here, right? A lot of folks can't afford to live. A lot of folks can't afford to stay. Youth who grew up here wonder, how am I going to make it as a young adult because the prices are so high? Long overlooked infrastructure needs. Coastal erosion, flooding that regularly happens. Your pier was damaged in December. Your schools are woefully underfunded. Goes way back to Prop 13, and the state of California has decided to abandon lower income communities, the less affluent, around public school funding. That's a deep issue I can't get into in the last minute I have, but we will talk about this, and I will fight for your schools to have the resources they need, but I'm getting ahead of myself because I need to mention that darn quarry, another issue of yours, right, that's just really got to be figured out. You have had to go it alone in a lot of ways. This is what I'm hearing. Measure O, good job for schools. Continuing on with Measure G, let's fight for Measure G, yes. Measure Y, to maintain vital services, was so important. You have begun to repair that pier. I applaud what you are doing here. I just don't want you to have to go it alone. Other big issues, coastal resilience, right? The inevitability of the sea level rise. How do we do it in a compassionate and equitable way? How do we respond to that? Healthcare, those who receive community health services have long wait times. It's really inequitable. You have been overlooked, and I want you to know that you will inform my heart, you will inform my head, and you will be in my heart if you send me to Washington. Thank you.
In response to the question, do we know the problems you're facing? I think it's good to start with the truth. If we don't live here, we don't really know. That's why it's important for us to listen and not for me to pretend that I know. I've been doing a lot of listening, and I look forward to doing a lot more listening in the days and weeks ahead. What I've heard very clearly from many of you is a real concern about the very high cost of living and how that shows up in so many ways. How critically difficult it is for anyone to afford housing here, to be able to pay their utility bills, which, by the way, the rates will increase again in April. And no public official in Northern California has been more outspoken or more active in organizing against rate increases from PG&E than I have, and that's why PG&E is spending a lot of money in independent expenditure right now against me. I am committed to fighting for you on those issues. I'm also committed to fighting on issues around the inadequate infrastructure that you're all dealing with. I'm glad to see Caltrans is underway on a broadband effort. We have very serious challenges with power outages here. And that's why in my book I proposed how we can help apartment owners and homeowners finance better resilience with batteries and rooftop solar and other efforts to make our communities more independently resilient. We have a serious challenge all throughout our district with homelessness. Homelessness rose in Pacifica, 50% unsheltered homelessness since 2019. We need federal commitment to partner better with local communities, and I've described several ways how to do that on my website, samlicaro.com, because these are battles I fought every day in the halls of Congress to try to get veterans off the street, and that's why we raised VASH vouchers and enabled more than 500 veterans to get housed in my city. And of course, there's coastal erosion. And you have worked hard in your community to establish a local coastal land use plan that deserves the deference of the federal government, that we need to work with you to ensure your plan is implemented to protect your community. Thank you.
Pacifica and the coast is the front line of climate change. I read a study last year, came from Scripps University. They're talking about, the number that stood out to me was 16 feet. 16 feet is the amount of coastal erosion we are seeing per year in beaches in Pacifica. 16 feet is 3 Jobies stacked on top of each other. This is not something you're going to see over a lifetime. We are seeing issues monthly and yearly that need to be addressed. So I think for me, running on a climate platform, that is my top priority, is ensuring that we can fight to solve climate change, but we must first think about resiliency and adaptation. How do we build the infrastructure that's necessary to prevent the worst harms of climate change from impacting our community? So where does that start? For one, that starts with building infrastructure. Highway 1 and 92 need to be improved. We need to improve the safety, and we need to ease the congestion. This is a fragile environment as well. When it comes to development, we need more affordable housing, but we need to build in a way that is sustainable and that will last for decades and centuries to come. We need to continue to support local schools in this area that have been consistently underfunded. And one that hasn't been brought up before is local agriculture. A community here that has 80 farms, we need to continue to support. And then lastly, I do want to talk about PG&E. It's an issue I've studied in depth in the past. If you look at areas of the state, where is the most outages occurring? Where have been the areas that are most vulnerable? The area that is most underdeveloped? We're seeing right here along the San Mateo coast, consistently PG&E has underinvested here, and it's time to fix that. We need to fix that with PG&E. We need to fix that with Xfinity. When there are storms here and public emergencies, it is of vital importance that our utilities are available to all. And so that is my priority.
Thank you. So passing the mic to Ahmed. And many of you, all of you, hit several issues of great concern to Pacificans. Mary Ann has the toughest job because she is culling and categorizing and avoid duplicates, but getting to all, the nuance of what we need to address here. So our first category, the Jeopardy category, is seawall repair, armoring the coast, and managed retreat. So here are some questions I'm going to read. Assuming community consensus of opinion is reached, would you support federal funding for coastal protections of public assets, and why? The city is working with the Coastal Commission to replace our seawall. Can you help with that? Okay, I haven't read this one yet. Managed retreat has become a toxic word for adaptation to climate change. How This is a first read, but I saw managed retreat. How does city staff, council, and citizens who may disagree come together to obtain funding from Congress to mitigate the effects of sea level rise? I think that gives you enough to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll start by saying that environmental justice is not a problem of by 2040, 2030. It's a problem of now. And we're seeing the effects right now. And the thing is, it's a human issue because those who suffer from climate change are usually and often directly our most vulnerable communities. So absolutely, we must support it with federal funding. We must do so in a way, again, like I said earlier, that empowers our communities to make those changes and empowers our local governments, builds infrastructures, gives jobs directly to the people here to solve these issues directly. And it's all interrelated. Like, our housing problems are related to climate change. We must increase, for example, the housing supply and do so using public lands and do so in a manner that provides for green transportation. We must build that infrastructure. We must do this now. And absolutely, it must be done through federal funding, because when we postpone these issues, when we make policies that are purely just long-term, and we still need the long-term issues, like the long-term solutions, but when we postpone them, the people that get hurt the most are oftentimes our ignored and most vulnerable communities. And I hear you and I feel you when you talk about the redistricting and how it's affected you. I promise to always be here in the district, to always come back, to listen to your voices directly, and to have sustainable solutions that are about today, that are about now, that ensure that your community is not left behind in any of these manners. And so absolutely would support federal funding, would support Cori Bush's Green New Deal for cities, which empowers us here in our local communities to solve these problems, because we are the experts of our own experiences. We do not have to rely on someone else in Washington, D.C. or a big environmental consulting firm to actually solve these problems. We need to go to you directly. We need to hear your issues, your problems directly. And that's what my promise is to you. My campaign is about human dignity, it's about humanity, and it's about you, and I will always commit to listening to you. So thank you very much.
So a few years back, we actually moved the Lindamar pump stations, moved it back. We should do the same for all the utilities infrastructure that is close to the beach. It's simple. It's very simple. We need to move them out at least 50 feet away. And that's the imperative on hand. And what is the role of a congressional leader? It's to basically vote on issues and bring funding. And for decades, our career politicians haven't really done their job. The funding hasn't hit the coast. We need to fix that. We need to fix that. And what we have done is we have written detailed policy positions that you can find at rishikumar.com/coast. And we have hundreds of policy papers. The way you find them is the keyword search is awesome. Just put in your word climate or PG&E, our favorite utility company, or whatever you like, and you'll find policy papers that we have written on that. Now, when it comes to we have commissions here. We have the coastal commissions. We have so many different, every city almost has their own commissions to handle these types of issues. Now, we need to make an investment. We need to bring federal investment to ensure that we do the right thing. Sometimes the answers are not very straightforward. We have already taken the time to, or rather to analyze, and there are certain homes that were actually ravaged by the storms that have been moved out, that have been abandoned or dismantled. And we need to be very careful to understand how this climate is going to impact, the changing climate, the sea level rise. How is it going to impact? And we have to come up with a strategic choice. So as a federal elected representative, my plan would be to collaborate with the county supervisors, with Sacramento, and make sure that we are providing the right level of engagement, education, and also funding needed to address these types of challenges. Now, PG&E is a big one. PG&E has failed us for many years. They need to make the investment. rishikumar.com/PGE.
I heard on the radio maybe a year and a half ago that the federal government was realizing that if it continued to provide insurance funds for people in hurricane country, it was just incentivizing people to rebuild in hurricane country. And the federal government is realizing that maybe they need to incentivize us to move out of harm's way. That's what's going to be coming from the federal government, trying to get us to relocate to higher ground, safer ground. I don't blame them. I understand that's a rational thing, but at the level of the humans who live in unsafe areas, it's scary. So I want to acknowledge that that's a federal perspective, and I will fight for the right incentives for us to build new, safer communities, and also fight for federal funds to shore up what we have where it makes sense. For example, the Army Corps of Engineers, when the Pajaro River overflowed its banks farther south, different district, the Army Corps of Engineers said these homes are not worth saving. What they meant was these people are not a priority for us. And I will never speak that way about any humans, and certainly not you. I am in favor of the Coastal State Climate Preparedness Act. This is a federal level act that has been proposed. I will be in favor of it. Let's see what we can get from it. But past practice says we cannot count on the feds or the state to look after us. In the end of the day, it's going to be on us to take care of us. We have to be respectful of the past and where we've been and how it was, but loyal to the future, ours and that of our children and that of our grandchildren. There is a baby in this room. We should be doing all of it for them, okay? I want us to not just survive this climate change, but to be humans who continue to thrive and persist. There is no unit of gathering stronger than local community. Together, and Connie, your question said, assuming the community consensus is reached, that's going to turn out to be the hardest and most important and necessary thing. Coming together to fight for all of us to make it.
I'd like to start where Julie left off, which is I've heard from many in the community their frustration and about the deep divisions in recent years over these issues. And what is important is you now have a local community land use plan, and that is something at the federal level we need to respect. We need to ensure dollars are there to support what you have decided to do in your community. And if that plan isn't adequate, then let's change the plan and let's work together to ensure it reflects the true will of the community. It's important for whatever happens that first we hear a strong voice here in Pacifica with consensus. Secondly, we can be honest about the reality of sea level rise and storm surges and still ensure that homeowners aren't placed in the position of seeing that their home values go to zero. We can do both. Now, the big question is, how do we pay for all this? Of course, all of us will tell you, we're going to bring federal money here. And I'm sure that we will all try to work hard to bring federal money here. But we need more options on the table. Yes, we need federal money, but we also need creative options, like, for example, tax increment financing. Not increasing taxes, let's be clear. It's about how we can get county, city, and the federal government working together, where we are enhancing the value of homes and property through measures that protect that property, being able to take that enhanced property value to put it to work in bonding for capital projects, such as whether that's riprap in some cases or elevating homes in other cases, whatever it takes to help protect folks. Tax increment financing has been used very effectively and poorly, depending on how it's used. I want to be a strong advocate for ensuring it gets well used. Secondly, I propose very specific measures in my book about how individual homeowners can better finance protections for themselves. That's critical. With a federally backed PACE financing program, we can help empower more apartment owners and homeowners and restaurant owners to ensure that their properties are protected, not just obviously against sea level rise, but for example, against wildfire risk in the mountains. Thank you.
today, the 10% of the wealthiest Americans emit over 40% of carbon dioxide emissions in this country. However, when you look the opposite way, the 10% poorest Americans are the majority of those who are most impacted by climate change. And it is an area like here of why federal funding is so important, is on the front lines of climate change disaster, you need federal funding to equalize those benefits. And that is clearly like the highest priority. And it's why all of us are probably running for office, is that we need more money here because all the problems cannot be fixed locally. We can do all we can to listen. We can do all we can to raise funds, raise awareness, but this problem needs to be fixed in DC, and we have 5 to 10 years to fix it. I've had a career working for climate startups. I've had a career working in 3 different climate investing firms. I've led 2 corporate sustainability programs. The private sector and local communities are trying to make a difference, but they cannot do enough. We need real change today in DC. So yes, more federal funding is necessary. We're going to need to go way beyond PACE loans to actually build the seawalls that are necessary, to continue to build infrastructure that will last and is climate resilient, and to continue to support communities and provide more resiliency and adaptation. Managed retreat is a very difficult topic. I don't have all the best answers. It's one that most climate experts don't have the best answers as well. But it's one that we need to be actively thinking about and considering on how are we going to continue to make plans with community engagement and community stakeholders and have everyone in the room to make the decision on how we can best support our community for decades to come. So let's ensure we get more federal funding, and let's ensure that all of us can be decision makers in that process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I'm County Supervisor Joe Simidian. The question is very similar to the earlier one, so I want to reiterate a couple of quick points. But first, here's what I want to say my greatest worry on your behalf is. I worry that this topic will still be the source of debate while Pacifica slides into the Pacific Ocean. And that means that there needs to be some sense of urgency on the part of your next representative, and I want you to know that I will take that sense of urgency to the work in Washington, D.C. As I said earlier, the community is going to need help with pushing past regulatory barriers at the federal level, the federal bureaucracy. We're going to need to look at the BRIC funding, and that's the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities funding that FEMA is involved in. That's where you find the resources that a smaller community like this one should not be expected to provide to actually get the work done. And then there are what is known as community project funding, what used to be called earmarks, and that have now been curtailed and structured in a way that is more responsible. And the member of Congress that represents Pacifica should be front and center saying this is a priority for community project funding. Those 3 things have to happen if there's a practical solution to this challenge. And the way I think you can judge who among us is likely to get that done is by saying, who's actually been a member of a large legislative body in the 5th largest economy in the world, representing 40 million people, and that would be uniquely me, and that's why I think my candidacy should have some traction with you, at least I hope it does. When I represented Half Moon Bay very briefly in the state legislature, just 2 years as a freshman assembly member, they said our priority is preserving those coastal bluffs along the railroad right-of-way. And as a freshman assembly member, I figured it out, got the funding, and those bluffs are there today. That's how I've done my work. It's how I will do my work for you. It's probably why all 5 members of the Half Moon Bay City Council have endorsed my candidacy. They've seen the work, and they know that that work will be replicated in my representation along the coast. Thank you very much.
So it goes to Rishi. And, you know, a lot of these issues overlap, as you can well imagine. This is a category on homelessness and housing. One questioner, and if the Coastal Commission imposes managed retreat on us, that removes a lot of existing affordable housing. So how can you protect our existing affordable housing? And then unhoused people, and how do you feel about Project Home Key and other efforts to provide transitional housing for unhoused individuals? Thank you.
So Connie is giving us 10 minutes to answer this question.
Yes.
So I'll try to get through it. Essentially, I feel we audited the HCD on the housing quotas because they are inflated. As a council member, what I did was I would never take the developer money because I see this is a historic land grab that's going on. There's an exodus. People are leaving. People are getting out of California. And here we are pushing housing. You look at my city, there are no jobs there. There are no transit. Why do you want to build 1,600 housing units in Saratoga? It doesn't make sense. Urban planning principles are very, very important. You need to consider the issues of housing. You need to consider traffic or water. You need to consider the coastal issues. That's how you come up with a proper urban plan. That's what I believe in. I think the housing quotas are completely inflated. And to some extent, it's the developers. You look at Peter Pau from Cupertino. He was in Sacramento, and he has collaborated with Sacramento legislators to roll out these very illogical, ill-conceived housing policies for California. You look at Prop 47, the career politicians rolled out Prop 47, which has increased crime in every corner of California. rishikumar.com/CP, career politician, and you will see some of the stuff that we have discovered about career politicians, how they have sold out the golden state of California, and the reason why we are being derailed, we are sliding downhill. I would like to state that, when you talk about managed retreat, that's a really bad word. We should be calling it strategic setbacks. It has to be very pragmatic, common sense thinking, come up with a real plan. People are so fearful of managed retreat. People are in fear of that. We need to come up with a better plan. When it comes to homelessness, for example, when you look at what happened at Half Moon Bay, the shooting, we have not good housing. We need to come up with a better plan. We need to take care of our farm workers. rishikumar.com/homelessness, rishikumar.com/housing. I wish I had 10 minutes.
I wish you did too, Rishi. I like listening to you. Thank you. I do. I like listening to all these guys. Everybody here is thoughtful. Everybody here is smart. We all come from different perspectives, but we have the luxury of having a really strong set of talent up here trying to serve you. And I'm one of them. I haven't listed my website, www.julie.vote, www.julie.vote. I think that's the thing to be saying here. I'm also first on the ballot, and that's just the luck of the draw. But if you don't remember anything else, like who was the one that was first? Okay, homelessness. I'm going to tell you something that may be controversial if you voted for Ronald Reagan, but I'm going to say it anyway. The federal government under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s created homelessness, and the federal government can solve it. Right now, the federal government spends 3% of its budget on addressing homelessness. I find that unconscionable. The federal government needs to spend a whole lot more money to address homelessness, not just for veterans, who matter greatly, but everybody. We need more vouchers, those Section 8 vouchers. We need more of them to support more people. We need Project Home Key money, and I love our Project Home Key project in Palo Alto, which is a transitional shelter for unhoused people. But I'm going to tell you that Palo Alto decided to put that shelter near the other side of the tracks, if you will, where we don't have any apartments, we don't have any single-family homes, we have no grocery. We've put the project, the shelter, near where we put our waste, okay? And so when in lauding the community for finding the way to do it, I said, next time, could we put the shelter near the grocery, near the transit, near the people, near the jobs? Because you see, I don't think there are any throwaway people. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. When it comes to affordable housing, as a sitting council member in Palo Alto, I was elected to help move the needle, to get Palo Alto to want to build more housing, and our residents are. We are raising the height limits and increasing density so we can build multifamily housing where it is appropriate. I was talking to Caroline earlier, and Caroline said, I don't necessarily want higher heights in our historic areas. I said, I get that, but what about at the shopping center? Could we get some housing there? Creative solutions to where we put affordable housing in every community are required. Thank you.
I suspect that we will be debating how we're going to get more affordable housing both here in Pacifica and throughout the district for the next decade, unfortunately, because of what we have seen over the last several decades. This is a problem that has taken a long time to get here. In fact, my ancestor, Jose Francisco Ortega, who was a Mexican scout in the Portola expedition, who was the first to view his expedition to view the San Francisco Bay from Montara Mountain, I think they probably complained about the lack of affordable housing then too, and that was in 1769. So, look, we've got to get federal government engaged. This is a national crisis. I hear about a housing crisis from every mayor of every city on both coasts and lots of towns in between, from Denver to Austin, everywhere else. So what I have set forth is a very specific set of ideas around how we can get the federal government to lean in to help local communities with affordable housing. For example, we've got a lot of office vacancy right now throughout the Bay Area in places like San Francisco and San Jose. Places where you can build a lot of density in downtowns without people in Pacifica having to deal with it. Spur estimated that if you converted 40% of the office vacancy in San Francisco, you could get 14,000 apartments. And guess what? Those buildings are already built. There's no environmental impact. So that is the place we need to focus federal tax credits to incentivize investment in that kind of conversion. So we can get the housing where it is close to transit, close to resources, where young people want to live, revitalize a lot of those downtown areas, and not destroying beautiful Pacifica and other communities that deserve protection. Project Home Key is a great program. I pioneered that effort in San Jose 4 years before Gavin Newsom made it cool. We launched an effort to convert motels to apartments for the unhoused, 2 motels in 2015 and 2016. Thrilled to see it went statewide and there's state money for it. We need a lot more innovation. What we launched in San Jose around quick build housing communities enabled us to get hundreds of people off the street. We need a federal government that will make vouchers flexible so that federal government will actually enable unhoused people to move into those transitional communities. I see my time has expired.
As one of the few renters up on this stage, housing's a real problem. From my doorstep, there is nowhere that I can walk anywhere in that region in order that I could ever buy a house today. And that's a real problem. The goal and the dream of housing is becoming out of reach for way too many. Right now in California, 1 in 9 individuals is behind on rent. In this area specifically of renters, around 20 to 25% of individuals are rent stressed. If you're rent stressed, that means around 50% of your post-tax income is going towards paying your rent. That's a real problem. How can you afford health care? How can you afford groceries with rising prices? How can you afford everything else that's necessary in life if you're paying a majority of your income going to rent? I do believe, though, this is a problem that we can fix. The solutions are not that far out of reach. Oftentimes, that are problems that we have created ourselves. As someone with a background in environmental policy, I have watched SEQA and NEPA, 2 environmental laws that have had many benefits, but have also been weaponized against us to prevent building more safe, affordable, and sustainable homes. We need to fix setback laws. We need to fix tax credits. We need to ensure that we can have appropriate height limits on buildings. We need to change minimum parking laws. The list goes on and on. There are past policies we have made that had great intentions, but haven't been touched in 40 years. And our country has changed in the last 40 years, and it's time to go back to these policies and make smart policies that will allow us to fix our housing crisis and fix homelessness.
Much of it has been said, so I want to be a little more personal because we're getting to know each other. I started my life being raised by a single mom in a place called Roosevelt Towers. And if that sounds like a government housing project, it's because it was and is. And in my toddler's mind and eyes, it was immense. Turns out it was only 8 stories tall. But when we talk about affordable housing, and I hear people use phrases like those people, what I'm always struck by is that's my mother and me they were talking about. We were those people. And that affordable housing gave my mother and me an opportunity to stabilize at a tough time in our lives. I was too young to know it was a tough time in our lives. And then go on to have a better life. And that's something I think, as Democrats, we can all agree we want for the people in our communities. And the answer is, it's an all of the above. There has to be some market rate, but there also has to be an adequate supply of homeless shelter spaces, interim housing, permanent supportive housing, and we have to develop all of that, somehow respecting the integrity of the communities in which that housing is located. Dealing with Sacramento, dealing with the Coastal Commission, your member of Congress should help you navigate those systems, be a partner and an ally whenever possible. But the housing has to get built. It is the foundation of what we call the American dream, something that was there for me and is no longer there for too many of our friends and neighbors and workforce. I'm building teacher housing right now because my father was able to buy a house in Palo Alto on a single school teacher's salary back in the day. Not anymore. So we're building the teacher housing. That's a Joe Simidian push. We're building a second project in another part of our county because it needs to serve as many districts as possible, not just to house our teachers and educator workforce, because it's going to be good for kids as well, to have those teachers on the campus, spending time with them, and learning that when the sign says stop, you stop.
I really appreciate Joe's story because supporting renters, first-time buyers, and people who are just trying to make ends meet, supporting the unhoused, they're not just policies, they're lifelines. And we must look at this issue not just from a pure, single issue, it's intersectional. So one thing that we have to do in terms of this intersectional issue is make the Violence Against Women Act permanent, because that allows people who need housing now and are oftentimes very much ignored. The other thing that we must do is pass Cori Bush's Unhoused Bill of Rights, because people who are unhoused, they have there's a false misinformation out there that people choose to be unhoused. That is absolutely not true. So we must support people, and it is not an excuse for us to live in the richest part or wealthiest part of the wealthiest country in the world, and to have people struggling to find a house, to have people who are struggling to move from place to people. And oftentimes, when we walk by people who are unhoused, if we continue doing that, we start to not feel about those individuals, and it can't be normalized. So let's say no today. Let's pass the Unhoused Bill of Rights. Let's expand the Violence Against Women Act, and let's have short-term and long-term solutions such that the wealthiest part of the wealthiest country in the world does not have an unhoused situation, an unhoused problem. Thank you.
Julie? So Mary Ann and I, we are doing our best to synthesize many, many cards, so we're trying to get to as many of your cards as possible. Spoiler alert, Congress is so divided and toxic that the work of the people is not being done. What would you do differently? How specifically would you work with colleagues you disagree with? Do you have hope that we can reunify our country and protect our democracy? How will you deal with a House that is controlled by the far right and will not negotiate? And finally, given the loss of Anna Eshue's seniority in Congress, what are realistic priorities during your initial term? 2 minutes, please, Julie.
I'm a note taker. I'm an academic. I'm a note taker. I'm a writer of books, and I always write down the questions because I want to try to be thoughtful and give my brain time to come up with what I think. So here's what I want you to know. I feel called to serve in this moment for this reason. I don't mean that as a matter of ego. I mean that I am the sort of person who, in my 56 years, because of my differences and my skin tone, my ancestry, what have you, I have often been on the outside. And I've often had to figure out how to talk with people who are different than me, who may not be super motivated to talk with me, or who may have stereotypical opinions of me, or have made up their mind. And I have had to devise ways to be authentically me, but also able to talk with people who might have a barrier up. Now, I'm not naive. I'm not saying I can get in there and convince Marjorie Taylor Greene to actually care about America. I think the people of Georgia need a better solution, and this is about strengthening local. Let's give the people, it's not on us, but the Georgians have to work on fielding better reps. But in the main, I know there are lots of good people in the United States House of Representatives. There's a caucus called New Dems, for instance, that wants to be the Democrats that are able to work on this side of the aisle and that side of the aisle. I would love to join them. I have a way of being that is fundamentally about treating others with dignity and kindness. Everybody in this room, when you're in a conversation, you don't want to be told what to think or told who you are. You want someone to pull up the chair and say, "Hi, how are you? How are you doing today? What matters to you?" Dignity and kindness, it sounds woo-woo. It is actually an emotionally intelligent way to interact with our fellow humans, and frankly, it is the only way to have good conversations and reach any kind of compromise, let alone vision. Vision is required for bringing America back. Okay, I am in this place of what the heck, America, and I'm going for that reason. I'm ready to serve and ready to engage even the most difficult of people. I know I can.
I think like many of you, I've been a Democrat my entire life, and I will continue to be one. But folks, we got to find ways to be able to communicate with and reach across the aisle to Republicans. And I've had to do that as a mayor, certainly. This is, for those of you who know, of the last 8 or 10 years for big cities, there have been a lot of divisive moments. We've had a pandemic. I've had protesters at my house literally within the same weekend protesting against mask mandates and protesting over the murder of George Floyd. That is the reality of governing in a large city of 1 million people. Nonetheless, it's incumbent upon leaders to listen to both sides, to listen to all. Doesn't mean you got to agree with everybody, but you got to listen. When I came into office in 2015, we were in the middle of, well, I came in 2015, I'm sorry. We were in the middle of a crisis then. We had lost more than 1,000 employees, nearly 600 police officers over battles over pension reforms and budget cuts and everything else. And I sat down for 11 months with all of our bargaining units, 11 unions, to talk about how we could meet their needs and still keep the city solvent with a $3 billion unfunded liability that I inherited. And we worked it out. And what we found was that we could all agree on a few truth tellers. There were actuaries who were actually giving us the numbers that we all agreed on. Let's start with truth tellers that we can actually agree upon. Believe it or not, there are some truth tellers on the Republican side. They're not doing the screaming, but they are telling the truth. And we need to talk to those folks who aren't screaming. Like Julie, I'm not going to hug it out with Lauren Boebert. I know that. But there are a lot of Republicans who aren't doing the screaming, and those are the folks we talk to, and we listen to who they listen to. What are their truth tellers who might agree with us? That's how we can build consensus to get through difficult moments. In San Jose, we resolved those battles. We went to the voters arm in arm, got voter approval for a measure that saved $3 billion for our taxpayers and enabled us to hire hundreds more employees and balance our budgets. Those are the things that we can do together when we're willing to listen.
I think I'm the only person on this stage who has worked for Republicans before. I've worked for Democrats. I worked on the Hill for a Republican senator. When I have worked for the New Hampshire, Vermont, and Utah state legislatures, I worked with Republicans there. When it comes to working across the aisle, I am skilled at doing it, and I enjoy doing it because to get stuff done, we need to work together. How we do this, generally not speaking in platitudes and about the future, you kind of get down to speaking in a narrative that they want to listen to. When I talk about climate, talk about the environment with them, it doesn't really sell. But when you talk about innovation, when you talk about jobs, when you talk about tax credits, their eyes perk up very fast on tax credits. It is an easy way to get stuff done, is ensure that you can speak on the same language and be there willing to listen, willing to learn, and wanting to work together. Like Julie said, I would plan to join New Dems immediately. Another important caucus is the Problem Solvers Caucus. I've talked to Representative Gottheimer. He said he could promise me a seat there day one and find a Republican to join with me. Working together is a key part of my platform. If you go to my website, jobyforcongress.com, you will see about my 20 policy priorities. All of them have seen bipartisan support in the past. They are progressive issues. They are boldly democratic issues, but they're issues that have gotten support from both sides of the aisle before because they work and because they have a high return on investment. So let's make sure that when we go to Congress, when I am there, I will work on passing things that can get done and have support. I always like to point to, as someone who loves the outdoors, the Great American Outdoors Act was passed under a Trump White House in a Republican Congress that put $50 billion to supporting the environment. Like, that is crazy. We got that done then. We will continue to get more bills like that passed that make a difference for all Americans.
So as we talk about listening, I'm not sure we're talking about just how hard listening can be. In 2016, 46% of the American electorate voted for Donald Trump for President of the United States. Now, here in California, it was 32%. In Santa Clara County, where I live, it was 21%. In Palo Alto, where I live, it's 12%. And so I concluded pretty quickly, something's going on out there that I need to understand if I'm going to be a capable elected official. And I picked 3 counties in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan that had historically voted Democratic, that had voted for President Obama, but that had flipped and voted for Donald Trump. And I invited myself to town to listen in all 3 counties and asked folks, you used to go this way, and then you went that way. What is that about? And you want to talk about some hard conversations? I had them. And then I came home and talked with people about what I heard and what I thought it meant for our future as a democratic nation. We do have to find that common ground. It happens when we listen, but listening is not as easy as we sometimes think it is. Thank you very much.
Listening is definitely not as easy as we think it is, but we must do so in a manner that humanizes other individuals. And when we listen to people's stories in a manner that affirms them and affirms their concerns, you can get places. And I've done that before, even in my relatively smaller experiences as a student leader. I was able to get the only ever signed agreement between a Hillel, a Students for Justice in Palestine, an American Students for Israel, and a Muslim Student Association. It was a signed statement by all those organizations condemning hate speech. And that only happens when you talk to people and humanize them. The first conversation that I had with all those organizations, every single one of them, we don't talk to them. It's actually against some of our charters on both sides. We don't negotiate with, this term. We don't negotiate with that term. But I'm like, listen to the hatred that has been happening on our campus. Listen to how these stories have affected people and their lives. And when we listen, we can negotiate. When we listen, we can empathize, we can love each other. Because at the end of the day, I would say most human beings are good. Actually, an overwhelming percentage of us are good. And so sometimes we're good and we think messed up things. We've all done that. We're like, oh, that guy? I don't know. But then you meet them and your mind completely changes. And that's what I would do no matter what your political affiliation is. I would listen to you and I'd be like, well, listen, check it out. Let's hear about so-and-so's story. Let's hear about this person who is affected by climate change. And sometimes people's opinions change. Sometimes people, it's an interesting fact. A lot of people who actually had voted for Bernie Sanders ended up voting for Donald Trump. Opposite mentalities, opposite perspectives, but it's about humanity. It's about listening to people, and you can change their minds and opinions. Thank you.
A URL for every topic. It's rishikumar.com. It's rishikumar.com/bipartisanship. I'm not kidding you. I'm a Silicon Valley geek. I write policy papers. No, but these are pragmatic, common sense policy papers. And, it's bipartisanship. It's not about going left. It's not about going right. It's about going forward. We are not the blue states. We are not the red states. We are the United States. We need to work together. I have an example of that. San Jose Water Company. I happen to be the only candidate in this race who actually battled with San Jose Water Company, with a utility company, and actually won. We won. We rejected 10 of the water rate increases, including many surcharges. rishikumar.com/water. Advice letter 501. That was the very first advice letter that anyone defeated. And we actually led charge with that back in 2016. 1 minute left. And it's a great story, because what we did was I teamed up with the Green Party city council members. I teamed up with Republican council members from Montecito. I even teamed up with somebody whose city was not a customer of San Jose Water Company. That was the mayor of Milpitas, who reached out to help me. This is how we collaborated across all these cities: San Jose, Los Gatos, Montecito, Campbell, Saratoga, and Cupertino. And that's why I have so many of these guys who have endorsed my run, because we were addressing the challenges of the people. The San Jose Water Company, their profits had jumped from $22 million to $52 million. Now today it's $60 million. It's rising every year. How come nobody did anything about it? Why am I the only elected leader fighting for like 6-7 years now? Why does that happen? Right? Because I'm not sold out. I'm here for the people. And as a mechanical engineer, I cut to the chase and I'm trying to solve problems. Now, when I see the issue with Washington, it's a sold out culture, but it's also a culture of gerontocracy. Everybody's following the herd. We need term limits and we need age limits. We need to change the culture, and that's my pledge to you. Let's work and team up and let's get crap done. Let's do it.
So we're starting with Sam this round. And you know what? We're going to do a lightning round. We have 2 questions that we really want to get to, but we've got to cut it to 1 minute answers, okay? So are you on board, Dave? 1 minute.
Do politicians know how to do that?
So, you know what? Mr. Mustafa mentioned this, and we do have a lot of concern in this room, including from the mother of the baby in this room, about what's going on in Israel and Palestine. So let me just put it out there. What is your position? Do you support a ceasefire? What would that look like? So, sorry, only 1 minute on this complex, awful issue.
It is. And I should mention that since Rishi was talking about water, it made me have to go to the restroom. So I'm going to apologize after my comment. I'm going to race to the back and I'll be back. Thank you, everybody, for... Yeah. I support the efforts of the Biden administration and Tony Blinken to negotiate an end to the fighting, which needs to happen immediately, so that we can get hostages released, because that's overwhelmingly the only way hostages are getting released, so we can get aid to 2 million Palestinians who are in desperate need and are homeless, and many of whom are on the brink of starvation. And we can work with moderate Arab states to get Hamas out of leadership in Gaza, because we need to ensure in the future we have a negotiating partner that does not have within their charter the elimination of Israel. We need a two-party solution. We need to have a two-state solution, independent states that are autonomous and can negotiate freely without calling for the destruction of the other.
I have three priorities here. They're the three H's. The first H for humanitarian aid. Right now, it's inconceivable that citizens in Gaza don't have access to medicine, don't have access to food, don't have access to water. That needs to be fixed first. The second H is hostages. We have 136 hostages. These are not military hostages. They were taken from their homes on October 7th when a ceasefire was broken and Hamas decided to act. Bringing those hostages home to their families is a priority. Many of them are children. Many of them are my age. Many of them are in their 80s and 90s. That needs to be fixed. And then the third H is Hamas. We have a terrorist organization that plans to attack Israel every single day. And if they had a chance to do October 7th again, they said they would do it today, again and again. Israel cannot afford, as our ally, to have a terrorist organization right on its border. So in Congress, my job would be to ensure that leaders in Israel and leaders in Palestine can come together to form a two-state solution. I think everyone here can be pro-Israel, we can be pro-Palestine, but we need those leaders to come together, reconcile their differences, and find a solution for lasting peace. Thank you.
What happened on October 7th was a terrorist act by a terrorist organization. Israel had every right to defend itself. Having exercised that right to defend itself, it has an obligation to do so in a way that minimizes civilian casualties to the greatest possible degree and allows aid, humanitarian aid, food, water, medicine to make its way to people who desperately need it. The long-term solution is a two-state solution. That will look more difficult today than it has looked during these last 75 years, but I believe it is the essential ingredient in bringing peace to the region. All of the issues that made it challenging over these last 75 years, settlements, right of return, Jerusalem, boundaries, they're all still there, and it's even more difficult to imagine today by virtue of the violence that has just taken place. There needs to be a lasting and sustainable peace. That will only happen once we have a return of the hostages and once Hamas is dislodged. That's where I am. Thank you.
We need an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And let me just start by saying there's just close to estimates of 30,000 civilians that have died. To establish permanent peace, we need to acknowledge civilian life. More than half of those civilian deaths have been women and children. We need a sustainable solution for the future. My dream is that children, that young child in Gaza or a young child in Israel can grow up and not have to think about bombs and not have to think about navigating their lives without their mother or father. And that is the only way to actually get a permanent solution to the conflict. We need a permanent solution that involves a self-determination and a feeling of having something to live for, having hope to live for the future. And think about the situation right now. The only time, almost, except for recently, that hostages have been released have been under humanitarian pauses. If this is about people, like whether they are Israeli or Palestinian, it's about establishing permanent peace, and that is exactly what I would support. Thank you.
URL first. It's rishikumar.com/Israel-Palestinian policy. Please go look it up. 1 minute. Well, you know, we had ceasefire on October 6th. That was broken on October 7th. And there was a travesty that played out in Israel. And I stand by Israel's right to defend itself. And I stand by supporting President Biden and Blinken with their policies because they have a lot more data on their hands. So I'm going with, this is way above my pay grade, and I'm willing to listen to our president in terms of what needs to be done. Now, when you look at the Afghanistan war, we had 400,000 casualties. This is 30,000. It's rising. It's not good. Death and destruction is never, ever good. Never good. It wasn't good for Israel. It isn't good for Palestinians. So I'm for peace. You know, we had 400,000 deaths. We spent $10 trillion. rishikumar.com/war. I will fight for peace. we need to find a way to peace. And I guess I have to stop here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I want to acknowledge that October 7th caused a lot of trauma for many people in this room, and its aftermath has as well. My kids are half Jewish. I come with a tremendous connection to the Jewish community. I also have a tremendous sense of alliance with the Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian community. And I wrote about this tragedy 4 days after it happened as a writer, just trying to unpack for the people who follow my writing how to begin to think about this compassionately. I didn't need to be a candidate to care about this topic. I have called for months now for a bilateral humanitarian ceasefire. I know that October 7th was a terrorist attack. It was atrocious, and it is atrocious what is happening to the innocent civilians in Gaza. I hate that the terms of war are so smooth, like casualties. You know, casualties mean humans died. We call it the theater of war. It's not a theater, it's frickin' war, okay? So I want us to return the hostages. I want to remove Hamas from the picture. Israel and Palestine have the right to coexist in security, safety, and peace where everybody has self-determination. And America, as Israel's greatest ally, has to tell tougher truths, not just give money to support this war, but use our diplomacy and ensure that Israel and Palestine can exist in peace.
Okay, again, a 1-minute lightning round. So, what is your position on Medicare for all, codifying Roe, and any other health, yeah, really, don't laugh at me, Sam, and any other healthcare issues that you want to address in a fleeting 1 minute?
Very tough. Hit Roe first. I believe it is always a woman's right to choose, no matter how far along in the presidency. It should always be a woman's right and her doctor's decision to come to that. It should never be any men in government who have a choice over this issue. That is important to always be fighting for women's rights every single day. Why we have turned back on that the last few years and seen what's getting passed in the Supreme Court and Congress makes no sense to me. I will be the strongest advocate I can possible for women's rights, and I believe that men have a bigger role to play in ensuring that part of this is problems that we have caused, and we need to be out there fixing it. So let's codify Roe, priority. When it comes to healthcare in America, I don't think we have healthcare. We have sick care. We have, right now, 24% of our federal budget goes to healthcare, and yet we have some of the worst outcomes in the developed world. I used to spend time doing healthcare economics research. I have thoughtful plans on ways that we can cut administrative costs. Right now, we spend $250 billion on administrative costs that are considered excessive. If we fix those based on plans that past presidents have put forward, it could give back Americans $1,300 paycheck per year, fixing efficiency. So let's make healthcare not just sick care.
Thank you. I chair our county's Health and Hospital Committee in a county with 2 million people. And when I came back on the Board of Supervisors about a decade ago, I made it a priority to make sure people got health insurance. We had 250,000 people in Santa Clara County who did not have health insurance. Working with the state, working with the feds, we have cut that number in half. That means there is still much more work to do, but there are 125,000 people who have health insurance today in Santa Clara County because of our combined efforts. I think that means we can make progress, and I think it means we still have more work to do. I absolutely support action by the Congress at the federal level to codify Roe. I think it's pretty clear we can't count on this United States Supreme Court to protect a woman's right to choose or her reproductive freedoms, and I think it's regrettably going to be that way for a very long time. I have also pushed to bring down the cost of drugs in our county. We have a program that I championed called MedAssist. That means if you're a person who is middle class and paying too much for EpiPens, asthma inhalers, or anaphylactic shock treatments, you can get help from our county by virtue of that work. Thank you. Time to pass the mic.
Healthcare is a human right, and women's rights are human rights. Reproductive rights are human rights. And so we need to codify we need to codify Roe. We need Medicare for all. Like I said earlier, nobody should be asking questions and making healthcare decisions that are life-threatening based on financial decisions. No one should be making critical healthcare decisions based on financial distress. It is something that is absolutely unacceptable, and we must acknowledge that this is very much a human issue and a human problem, and we need to ensure that nobody has to make those choices. So I will fight to codify Roe and to ensure that every woman has the right to choose, and that me, like a 30-something-year-old man, doesn't get to say and have a say into your reproductive decisions. It should not be the case, and it should never be the case. So I will always ensure that those rights exist. Thank you.
So all 9 of us actually will legislate and codify Roe versus Wade. So there's not a whole lot of difference between all 9 of us. And in fact, even the 2 Republicans will probably say that too, you know. So that's that. I'll send you to the mothership this time. Go to rishikumar.com/priorities, and you will find all my legislative priorities right there. And lots of great icons you can click and read, and we make it very easy for you. And rishikumar.com/Medicare is my position paper on Medicare. And my plan is to expand senior Medicare. We need to add vision and dental to it. We need to also provide the ability to expand the Family Medicare Leave Act so that a family member can be taking care of a senior and actually get reimbursed for that, making a sacrifice. So these are some. We need to negotiate every single Medicare drug. I don't know why the federal government does not negotiate the drugs. We only do 12, which is a travesty. And we cannot privatize Medicare, which is what is going on. The very premise of my run was to actually challenge the system because we had too many sold-out politicians who were on the payroll of pharma. And that's the reason why I decided to run in this race. And it is a core component of what I seek to do. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
The very reason I decided to run was because our Congresswoman Anna Eshoo of 32 years decided to step down. I saw 10 men step up to replace her, and I decided that in this American era where Roe versus Wade is gone and The Handmaid's Tale is not just a dystopian novel or a television show, women's rights are under assault, period. And if you don't know that, you're not paying attention, but I know you are paying attention. Do you know that the Bay Area has been helmed in Congress by women for 30 years? And one by one, they're retiring. We've just lost Dianne Feinstein, okay? It is important that a woman's voice be present to represent this district. I will codify Roe, and with all respect due to my amazing colleagues who are pro-choice, it is different. I'm the only one who's had that phone call from my OBGYN telling me something might be wrong with my fetus. And when it is personal, you fight differently, and I will. When it comes to Medicare, I have never longed to be 65 more than when I was 54 fighting with my health insurance company. They would not cover a drug. My doctor said I needed to correct a thing going on with my body, okay? Medicare for all, heck yes.
So I will join the chorus certainly in saying I will absolutely fight for reproductive freedom. I know as a former criminal prosecutor who used to prosecute cases involving sexual assault and child exploitation, I saw too many and served too many 15-year-old victims who critically needed to get abortion. They critically needed reproductive care. And I can't imagine what those same survivors have to deal with in other states. It's horrible. So yes, I'll fight hard to codify and do whatever we can to fight for those reproductive rights for all of us. Secondly, with regard to Medicare for all, we have a Republican House of Representatives. In the next session, we are probably going to have a Republican Senate, even if we're able to get the House back to the Democrats. We have to find solutions that will reduce the burden of health costs in a divided Congress. What I put forward in my book, among other things, is tougher regulation against pharmacy benefit managers. Right now, 3 of these companies are in the top 10 of the Fortune 500, and they are costing us enormously. If we had Medicare buying drugs from Costco, we could save $2.6 billion. Instead, all that money is going to major corporations that are bleeding our healthcare system dry.
So the mic goes to Joe now, and we're back to 2 minutes for concluding remarks.
I want to be your member of Congress, and I am asking for your support today. And the reason I'm asking is because the only reason to run for office, and certainly the only reason to run for Congress, is to improve the lives of the people you represent. And that is why I want to go to Congress. It is what I have done, it is what I am doing today, and it is what I will do as your member of Congress. As a state legislator, people said, oh, you can't get renewable energy to happen. People aren't there yet. And I said, no, we can. And I authored the legislation that created 33% renewable requirements here in California, and we have hit those targets in 2020, just as I had anticipated we could and should, and that's why the Sierra Club, among other reasons, is endorsing my candidacy. I said, you know what? People are dying unnecessarily on the highway every day. We got to tell them to put the cell phone down. People said, oh, you can't get people to put their cell. I said, yes, we can. And it took me 6 tries. But finally, I was able to pass that hands-free cell phone bill, and guess what? Deaths on our highways went down 20% the first year the bill was in effect, 700 fewer deaths on our highways. That means that every day a couple of people are getting to go home and have dinner with their families who otherwise wouldn't have made it. People said, we ought to do something about early childhood education. I said, yeah, I've been hearing that for 25 years. It's time to look to the future and figure out how to make it happen. And so I wrote the bill that created transitional kindergartens so that there are 400, 500,000 4-year-olds in this state who are going to get a head start on their early childhood education and be successful, not just in school, but in their lives. We have to look to the future, and then we have to deliver results in difficult times. Republican votes on all those bills, by the way. That's how I want to approach these issues in Congress. Yes, a woman's right to choose reproductive freedom has to be at the top of the list. So does climate change. So does health care. And so does making sure that everyone in this country can feel some measure of economic security, whether it's through jobs and job training and infrastructure development, or whether it's through that safety net that is essential to who we are as Americans and our belief that we share a common bond with our friends, our neighbors, and our colleagues. JoeSimitian.com. I'm only going to say it once. Please take a look. Please lend your support. Please grab a yard sign at the back of the room. Thank you for having us all here today. It's been a joy.
My name is Ahmed Mustafa, and I'm running to represent you. And that's what I've done my entire life. You know, as a student leader, I registered 12,000 students to vote and was able to do that to turn a district that's traditionally been red to blue. Afterwards, I taught at inner city schools in Chicago. I taught summer school. I continued doing so through law school to teach students and to be there with students in our most underrepresented areas. After that, I worked as a clerk with the Public Defender's Office, representing those who have been the most indigent and most underrepresented, and ensuring that the government always has the burden of proof to take away somebody's liberty. While doing that, I started a startup company to represent women and to ensure that they are safe in social media, and was able to sell that company to one of the #1 dating apps for Middle Eastern women to ensure that they were protected. I then went to Google as a tech policy lead to stop misinformation on the internet. And I was the lead on hate speech content. And I worked to mitigate the harms recently of AI with regard to deepfakes, with regard to hate speech being used in a manipulative way. And while working at Google, I represented survivors of sexual violence with Equal Rights Advocates, a national women's rights organization, where I was awarded Pro Bono Attorney of the Year for my work, because it's not just about the legal representation, it's about uplifting people's dignity and ensuring that their worst moment of their lives does not define them. And I continue to do that work today, teaching law students in a clinic at Stanford Law School to take on those cases and to represent those cases themselves. So uplifting the cycle and ensuring that people are represented. And that has been what I promised to you. My life hasn't been a political career ladder. My life instead has been about people, then people, then people. And when I run for Congress and when I win, it's going to be about you, the people. Thank you all so much.
I propose that we send Connie to moderate the Trump-Biden debate. What a fabulous job she's done today. What a fabulous job. And it's an honor for me to be here, standing here today with some amazing colleagues having this discussion. Thank you all. And just gentlemen is applauding the loudest. I really appreciate that. So I'm not a career politician. Here are reasons why you should support me. I'm the only one in this race sitting at 42% of the votes, 127,000 votes we have received in this very district. I'm the only one who's actually reduced crime. I'm the only one who's fought against a utility company and won. I'm the only one who's actually pushed back a tax increase proposal. I'm the only one probably who has a policy for the coast, rishikumar.com/coast. Please go take a look at that. And essentially, what I seek to bring, there are a few reasons. One is a getting things done approach, which is really what I did. You know, as a part-timer, having a full-time day job, a stressful day job, a family, and then trying to address the challenges on city council. What I did was, every minute I spent would be productive, trying to actually solve a problem. For my first term, all I did was battle San Jose Water Company and launched like 70 neighborhood watch programs to drop burglaries in my city. Dropped by 50%, a historic drop. No other city in Santa Clara County had achieved that drop. That got me reelected with the highest votes in 66 years of my city. That's the zeal, energy, innovation approach, ideas, and vision that I seek to take to Washington. We need to get away from this sold-out culture, which is sweeping America, it's derailing America, and that's really very wrong. We need the approach of getting things done, collaborating, and finding solutions, actually addressing the challenges of our nation. And this is where our politicians, there is a lot of fighting going on. You know, while the room is burning, you know, we have somebody playing the fiddle, you know, polishing a mahogany table. You know, people are politicians, career politicians are totally off the charts. They're really not addressing the challenges of the people. I'm fighting for your interests, not the special interest, and I will never, ever, ever let you down. Thank you so much.
I'm going to get super personal for a sec. I'm a mom. I got 2 kids. I got a daughter, Avery, 22, performing artist in London, and a son, Sawyer, 24, lives under the same roof as me and is employed by the Palo Alto Unified School District as an aide for kids with special needs. When Sawyer got that job 2.5 years ago, he came home with all the paperwork, and he had to fill out, you know, opt in for health insurance and retirement. And he took care of all of it, but the retirement paperwork sat on the table for like a week and a half. And finally, his dad and I were like, Sawyer, you got to fill this out. And our brilliant, beautiful 22-year-old son at the time looked at us with wide eyes and said, retirement? I don't think there's going to be a planet, a society that I'm going to be able to retire into. And he meant it, and he was holding back tears. My son that day confirmed for me what I have heard in my travels around this country. I'm an author, I write books on human thriving, I go around the country, I listen. And youth have consistently, for a number of years now, expressed fear. Reproductive freedom, bodily autonomy, what's happening to the climate? Will they have health care? Will they have health insurance that covers the meds that they need for their mental health? Okay, cost of living, housing cost up here, salaries down here. Gun violence, they grew up with active shooter drills. Anyone under 25, the first in America to grow up with active shooter drills, they're afraid, and it's not their fault. We have done this. Those of us who have presided over these places for decades, what have we been doing to address the needs of our youth? It is the mark of a thriving American society that the next generation will have a higher quality of living than the past, not a lower quality of living. Our youth are scared, and it's not their fault. And as much as I'm running for all of you, I'm running for them, for the youngest people in this room, to have the kind of prosperous, healthy, safe, secure, kind America. I haven't even mentioned hate and divisiveness and democracy under assault. Our youth have the right to be worried. Their anxiety is not because they're fragile. It is because they are entering an America that is broken. And I am running for them. At my events, youth come and their parents say, as they walk out, my son just whispered, she gets what we're going through. I do, and I hope you get it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Your presence speaks volumes. about your commitment to this community, to our country. And as much as democracy is under assault in every corner of this country, democracy is clearly alive in Pacifica, and it's because of you. So thank you for being a part of this process. For whoever you vote for, thank you for being part of this. And thank you, of course, to our organizers. We've done a lot of talking, and it's time for us to listen. I'll be down at the Starbucks at 11:30 over on Oceana, so please join me if you'd like to. I'll be there with some community leaders. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you're most concerned about here in Pacifica and all along the coast side, because we do a lot of talking and frankly too much talking, and it's probably a good idea for us to listen. I learned that lesson very early on as mayor, because I learned that listening was so essential to problem solving. You just can't solve problems until you really understand all sides. You really understand deeply the perspectives of people who are being so deeply affected, and their lives are being so deeply challenged by the high cost of utilities, by the high cost of housing, by homelessness, so many other challenges that we have in our communities. When I was mayor, as I mentioned, in my final year, we reduced street homelessness by 11%. We had the lowest rate of homicide of any major city of the 50 largest cities in the country. We had reduced GHG emissions by 36%, in part because I had led 3 ballot measures to protect hillsides and open spaces against development. And those were bruising battles against very powerful and wealthy developers. And I left my successor a $30 million surplus. We need those kinds of results in Congress. We need that kind of accountability in Congress. We need more mayors in Congress who get the fact that we all have to be accountable in government for getting results. We don't have the luxury as mayors of pointing to the other party and say we didn't get anything done because of them. We need a Congress and members of Congress willing to say we're getting it done for you. Thank you.
Joby's going to bring us home.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out today and listening. Listening means a lot, but there was, at a previous debate, Julie had a shirt that I really liked that said, "Democracy is not a spectator sport." I think that's all very important. Listening is the first step, but the next step is getting out there and getting involved. I hope that I can earn your support, but I want each of you to do your research and come out and support one of us. That means grabbing yard signs. You can get 2 different candidates because we get 2 candidates to move on to the next level. It means it means going out there and canvassing with us. At 12, I am going to the Manor Safeway up the road. Would love to have some of you come out and canvass with me. I've been doing it most days of the week, rain or shine, generally rain right now because it's California. But we would love to have your support. It means more than just listening and going out there and talking to others and scaling and ensuring that everyone's voice can be heard and everyone knows that there is an election coming up and it matters. I am running because I believe it is time for a next generation. It is time for fresh leadership. Throughout American history, every single new generation has risen to the challenges. Whether it was world wars or polio, we have fought to fix America's biggest problems. And too often, I see other young people like myself thinking that it's time to throw in the towel on American democracy. But now is not the time. Now is when we need to fight more than ever to fix the issues that are going to define us in this decade and the 3 decades to come. So let's make sure that we can go out there and fight to fix climate change, fix our healthcare, fix immigration, and fix education. When I see a wrong or a problem, I do something about it. Rather than leaning back and criticizing the way things are, I fight to fix it. And that's my commitment and promise to you all. I'm Joby Bernstein, I'm running for Congress, and I'm running for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for this tremendous turnout. Please consider joining our club. Our next meeting is on March 16th. Our next speaker is still to be determined. You know, we didn't get to this topic, but Julie brought up active shooter drills. We had gun violence. So I had intended, and I will proceed, to adjourn this meeting in memory of the victims of the Kansas City shooting and the 17 students and staff killed almost exactly 6 years ago at their high school in Parkland, Florida. And then the last couple of days, I added this name because we need to remember this man. Trump's BFF, Vladimir Putin, finally succeeded in killing Alexei Navalny, opposition leader to Putin's murderous regime. May he rest in peace. And I hope this is the kick in the ass that Congress needs to fully fund Ukraine. So thank you all. Consider tipping our server floor. And I think with that, we are adjourned, except I did want to ask, if I haven't done it already, you know, the elderly woman with the poor memory, give these fine candidates a rousing... Thank you so much for coming to Pacifica.